There are moments in life that define us, moments when we are tested, judged, and sometimes completely underestimated. This is my story, a story about respect, about the secrets we carry, and about the day my past came to light in the most unexpected way possible. My name is Helena Garrett. I'm 38 years old, and I work as a nurse in the trauma unit at Memorial Medical Center in San Antonio, Texas. But what happened that October day changed everything. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover will challenge everything you think about judging people based on their appearance. This isn't just my story, it's a story about all of us. I was born in a small town called Fredericksburg, in the heart of the Texas Hill Country. One of those towns where everyone knows everyone, where the mornings smell of oak and the afternoons are long and warm. My mother was an elementary school teacher, and my father worked as a mechanic at the local garage. I grew up surrounded by open fields, huge skies, and the comforting sense of homeliness. From an early age, I knew I wanted to help people, not in the ordinary way, but truly. At 18, I enlisted in the Navy. I wanted to see the world. I wanted to make a difference. After completing basic training, I was selected for combat medic school. There, I learned to save lives under extreme pressure. I learned to operate in impossible conditions, to make split-second decisions, to remain calm when everything around me was falling apart. I spent 6 years serving in conflict zones, Iraq, Afghanistan, places I can't name. I worked side by side with special forces, SEALs, Rangers, the best of the best. I earned decorations, respect, and a collection of nightmares that haunt me to this day. But there comes a time when you have to choose between continuing the war or trying to find peace. I chose peace. I returned to Texas 5 years ago, became a civilian nurse, and tried to build a normal life away from the horrors I witnessed. Memorial Medical Center is a Level 1 trauma hospital. We receive the most severe cases, the most brutal accidents, the most critical injuries. It's a high-pressure environment where seconds can make the difference between life and death. The hierarchy here is rigid. Doctors at the top, nurses below, and a clear line separating those who make decisions from those who carry out orders. I've never had a problem with that. After all, I came from a military environment where hierarchy was law. But there's a difference between respecting hierarchy and being treated as an inferior. Dr. Richard Caldwell was the chief of trauma surgery, 52 years old, a Johns Hopkins graduate, with an impeccable reputation and an ego the size of Texas. He was brilliant. There's no denying it. His hands saved lives daily, but he was also known for his explosive temper and his complete lack of respect for nurses. To him, we were just glorified assistants. It was an ordinary Tuesday when it all began. We were in the middle of emergency surgery on a 23-year-old who had been in a motorcycle accident, severe abdominal bleeding, a ruptured spleen, and plummeting blood pressure. I was assisting, anticipating Dr. Caldwell's every move, passing instruments before he even asked. Suddenly, he stopped and looked at me with that familiar contempt. "She's just a nurse," he said to the resident next to him, as if I were invisible. "She passes the instruments, but she doesn't understand what we're doing here." The room fell into an awkward silence. I felt my face heat up, but I maintained my composure. I kept working, focused on the patient, because in the end, it wasn't about me or him. It was about saving that life. So, what do you think so far? Have you ever been disrespected at work? Share your thoughts in the comments. We saved the boy from the motorcycle accident. He survived thanks to teamwork, not the ego of a single surgeon. But those words echoed in my head for days. She's just a nurse. As if my years of experience, my training, my invisible scars meant nothing. I tried to forget, to move on, but the humiliation had left its mark. 3 days later, on Friday afternoon, we received an emergency call. A helicopter was bringing in a critical patient. Combat wounds. My heart raced when I heard those words. Combat wounds meant military, probably special operations. When the helicopter landed on the hospital helipad, the team rushed to receive the patient. I was among them. I saw the stretcher being lowered, the body covered in blood, the military paramedics working frantically. "Blast wounds!" one of them shouted. Multiple shrapnel, a punctured lung, massive blood loss. We took him straight to the trauma room. Dr. Caldwell took command immediately, barking orders, moving with the precision of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. I stood beside the gurney, connecting monitors, checking airways, doing my job. It was then that I looked at the patient's face. He was unconscious, his skin pale, sweat mixed with dried blood, but there was something familiar. A tattoo on his right arm, partially covered in blood, a trident with wings, the symbol of the Navy SEALs. My stomach clenched. I wiped the blood from around the tattoo and saw more details. Below the trident, numbers, a date, and suddenly, a memory hit me like a punch. Thank you for sticking with me this far. I know this story is just beginning to reveal its secrets, but believe me, the best is yet to come. Keep watching. Helmand Province, Afghanistan, 8 years ago. I was 30 years old and on my 4th deployment to a combat zone. I was assigned to a special operations team, providing advanced advanced medical support on high-risk missions. I can't reveal specific details, but I can say those were the most intense days of my life. We were on a rescue operation, extracting a high-value informant from an insurgent-held compound. Everything went wrong. The intelligence was out of date. What was supposed to be a quick entry turned into a brutal ambush. We were surrounded, outnumbered, and under heavy fire from all sides. 3 men on the team were hit in the first few minutes. I was with them, crouched behind a mud wall that crumbled with every burst of bullets. The team commander shouted to me, "We need to stabilize them now, or they won't get out of here alive." There was no time for fear, no room for doubt. I dragged the wounded to a minimally protected position as bullets whizzed overhead. The first had a gunshot wound to the abdomen, arterial bleeding. I compressed the wound, inserted a chest tube right there, on the dirt floor of an Afghan village, with explosions shaking the air around us. The second had shrapnel in his chest and leg. Tourniquet, direct pressure, morphine. Hands trembling not from fear, but from pure adrenaline. The third was the worst. A carotid artery wound, losing blood too quickly. I placed my fingers directly on the wound, pressing on the artery, keeping him alive with brute force while the shooting continued. I stayed like that for 23 minutes until the evacuation arrived. 23 minutes with my finger inside a man's neck, keeping him alive. All 3 survived. One of them had a trident tattoo on his arm. One of them had that date tattooed on his arm. I returned to reality at Memorial Medical Center, with that SEAL in front of me, fighting for his life again. Could it be him? 8 years later? Was it possible? Dr. Caldwell continued working, removing shrapnel, suturing blood vessels, saving organs. The surgery lasted 4 hours. It was a success, but the patient was critical. He was transferred to the ICU under my care. I spent the entire night at his bedside, monitoring every heartbeat, every breath. At 3 a.m, his eyes opened. He was disoriented, confused, trying to understand where he was. "You're safe," I whispered. "You're at Memorial Medical Center in San Antonio. You've had surgery. You need to rest." He looked at me, blinking slowly, trying to focus. Then his eyes widened. I saw recognition in that look. "Ghost," he whispered hoarsely. "You're the Ghost." My heart stopped. Ghost was my code name in special operations. Only people who were there with me would know that. "Hush," I said, touching his arm. "You're delirious. You need to rest." But he gripped my hand with surprising strength for someone who had just come out of surgery. "Helmand," he insisted, "you saved my life. You saved all of us." I didn't know what to do. Years of therapy had taught me to bury that past, not to revisit those traumas. But there he was, a literal ghost from my past, bringing it all back to the surface. He began to speak louder, drawing the attention of the other nurses and doctors on duty. "You don't understand," he said. "This nurse, she's not ordinary. She's a war hero." The news spread through the hospital like wildfire. Nurses and doctors began to gather around the ICU, curious about what the SEAL was saying. Dr. Caldwell appeared, irritated by the confusion. "What's going on here?" he demanded. The SEAL, whose name I learned was Derek Matthews, looked directly at Caldwell. "You called her just a nurse," he said. "I was awake in surgery for a few seconds. I heard you." Caldwell blushed. "I don't know what you're talking about, soldier. You were under anesthesia." Derek propped himself up on his elbows, ignoring the pain. 8 years ago, he began. "My team was in an ambush in Afghanistan. 3 of us were hit. I was shot in the carotid artery. This woman here put her fingers inside my neck and kept me alive for 23 minutes under heavy enemy fire. She operated on 2 other soldiers at the same time, on the dirt floor of a village, with explosions all around us. She saved us, all 3 of us. The silence in the ICU was absolute." Derek continued, his voice growing stronger. "She received the Bronze Star for valor that day. She worked with the Special Forces for 6 years. She has more combat trauma hours than half the surgeons in this hospital. And you had the audacity to call her just a nurse." I felt all eyes on me. My past, which I had guarded so carefully, was being exposed for all to see. Part of me wanted to run. Part of me wanted to disappear. But another part, a part I had buried for years, felt something different. Validation. Dr. Caldwell was pale, looking between Derek and me, processing the words. "Me," he began, but couldn't finish. "I need to talk to you," I said quietly, in private. We left the ICU, leaving Derek to rest. In the hospital hallways, Caldwell looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something different in his eyes. It was no longer contempt. It was something close to respect, mixed with shame. In the days that followed, my life was turned upside down. The story spread not only through the hospital, but throughout the San Antonio medical community. Reporters began calling. Veterans began showing up to thank me. The hospital administration wanted to hold a recognition ceremony. I hated it all. I left the military precisely to avoid this kind of attention. The flashbacks I had controlled with years years of therapy began to return. The sleepless nights returned. I saw faces of people I couldn't save. I heard explosions that existed only in my memory. Derek was recovering well, but every time I entered his room, he wanted to talk about Afghanistan, about that mission, about how I had changed his life. I appreciated the gratitude, but every word was like reopening a wound that had never fully healed. Dr. Caldwell avoided me, not out of contempt this time, but out of obvious shame. Until one morning, a week after the incident, he sought me out in the break room. I was alone, drinking coffee, trying to maintain my sanity. He entered hesitantly, something completely out of character for a man normally so confident. "Can I speak with you?" he asked. I waved to the empty chair. He sat, looking down at his hands. "I owe you an apology," he began. "Not just for that comment in surgery, but for years of disrespect. Not just to you, but to all nurses. I let myself believe that titles meant competence, that hierarchy meant value. I was wrong." I remained silent, letting him continue. "You have more experience with real trauma than I ever will," he said, "and I treated you as if you were inferior. That is unforgivable. Where are you watching from now? Tell us your state or country in the comments. I'd love to hear who's following these stories." I looked at Dr. Caldwell, this man who had publicly humiliated me, now sitting across from me with genuine humility. Part of me wanted to accept his apology and move on, but another part, the part that carried years of unspoken pain, needed to speak. "You want to know why I came back as a nurse?" I asked. "Why would someone with my qualifications choose a position you consider inferior?" He nodded, listening. "Because I was broken," I replied simply. 6 years in combat zones had destroyed me mentally. I saw death every day. I held 18 and 19-year-olds as they died in my arms. I made decisions about who had a chance of survival and who didn't. I carried the weight of those choices every single day. My voice shook, but I kept going. When I returned, I tried working in military hospitals. I couldn't. Every injury took me back to those places. Every code blue made me relive traumas. I broke down, literally. I spent 3 months in treatment for post-traumatic stress disorder. Caldwell was pale, listening to every word. My therapist told me I needed to find a way to use my skills without diving back into that world. So I chose to start over, as a civilian nurse. No spotlight, no recognition, no pressure of being a war hero. Just helping people in a simple, direct way. Tears were streaming down my face now. Years of pent-up emotions finally coming out. And it worked. I kept going. For 5 years, I managed to live a relatively normal life, until that comment of his reminded me that, no matter what I do, there will always be people who judge me only on the surface. Caldwell was crying too. "I'm sorry," he said. "I had no idea." "No one did," I replied, "and that's how I wanted it. But now everyone knows, and I don't know if I can handle it." The hospital administration scheduled a recognition ceremony for the following week. They wanted to publicly honor me, invite the press, make a big deal out of it. I said no. I flatly refused. My supervisor, a kind man named Marcus Johnson, tried to convince me. "Helena," he said, "you deserve this recognition. People need to know who you are." "But I don't want that," I insisted. "I left that life behind for a reason. I don't want to be the war hero nurse. I just want to be a nurse." Derek Matthews, now recovered enough to walk, came to see me. He showed up at my shift with flowers and a smile. "I heard you turned down the ceremony," he said. "Yes," I replied. He sat next to me at the nurse's station. "Can I tell you something?" he asked. "Always. When you saved me that day in Afghanistan, I was terrified. Not of death, but of not having made a difference, of dying without meaning. But then you showed up, this force of nature, and kept me alive. You know what I thought when I woke up in the field hospital?" He paused. "I thought that if someone like you existed, someone who cared so much, who fought so hard for strangers, then the world was worth saving. You gave me purpose that day." My heart sank. "You don't need ceremonies or medals," he continued, "but don't let humility turn into shame. You helped people. You saved lives. That's not something to hide." His words echoed within me for days. I had been hiding my past out of shame or genuine necessity. I began to question my choices, my fears, my entire identity. Finally, I made a decision. I called Marcus and the hospital administration for a meeting. "I will accept the recognition," I said, "but on my terms." The ceremony was small, intimate, just hospital staff. No press, no spectacle. I stood in front of my colleagues, the people I work with every day, and told my story. Not as a heroine, but as a human being. I spoke about the trauma, the struggle, and rebuilding my life. I spoke about the value of every person in that hospital, regardless of title or position. Dr. Caldwell was present. When I finished, he stood up and did something no one expected. He publicly apologized. Not just to me, but to the entire nursing staff. He acknowledged years of institutionalized disrespect and promised real change. In the months that followed, the hospital culture truly shifted. Caldwell initiated regular meetings where nurses had an equal voice with doctors. He implemented recognition programs. Most importantly, he treated everyone with genuine respect. Derek recovered fully and returned to his unit. Before leaving, he came to say goodbye. "You changed this place," he said, "just like you changed that village in Afghanistan. Wherever you are, lives are improved." I smiled, finally at peace with my past and present. "I didn't change anything alone," I replied. "I just reminded people to look beyond the surface. Today, I'm still a nurse at Memorial Medical Center. I still work long shifts. I still care for critically ill patients. I still do the work I love. The difference is that now I no longer carry the shame of my past. I am Helena Garrett, war veteran, PTSD survivor, and yes, a nurse. Not just a nurse. Never just. Because I've learned that there's no such thing as just anything. Each person carries a story, invisible struggles, hidden strengths. True respect comes from recognizing that we never fully know who's in front of us, and that's the most important lesson of all." So, what did you think of this story? Have you ever experienced or witnessed a situation where someone was completely underestimated, only to later reveal a strength or story no one imagined? Maybe you're that person yourself, carrying on struggles others can't see. Share your experience in the comments below. I love reading your stories and learning from you too. If this story touched you in any way, if it made you rethink how you judge those around you, please subscribe to the channel. We have many other real and impactful stories of healthcare professionals who face extraordinary challenges every day. Turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any new videos. And be sure to watch the next recommended video, where another nurse shares how a devastating medical error nearly destroyed her career and her life, but the truth came to light in a way no one could have predicted. It's a story of redemption, justice, and the incredible strength of the human spirit. Until next time,